This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Today, we're going to listen to a new podcast created by the nonprofit Vermont Folklife. It's called The Arts That Shape Us. It's devoted to exploring the state's cultural heritage and what different local art forms say about the past and present of Vermont. This podcast is one of 10 projects funded by Vermont Public's Made Here Fund, created to support Vermont media makers. Vermont Folklife's Director of Education and Media, Mary Wesley, hosts the show. In this first installment, she takes us to Barre. As Mary explains, the city had a booming granite industry, and this industrial tradition birthed an artistic one. Here's the first installment of The Arts That Shape Us. Enjoy.
Everything that I make is shown, it's on display somewhere in the United States, in a cemetery somewhere, where it is viewed by thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the course of its lifetime, which is forever. I mean, stone lasts forever. So, when you're trying to be mindful about creating something that is always going to be here, you want to do your best work.
Welcome to The Arts That Shape Us, an audio series about traditional arts and the ways they shape culture and communities. I'm Mary Wesley. We've created this series in collaboration with Vermont traditional artists. Vermont Folklife is a statewide cultural research and education nonprofit. For the past 40 years, we've engaged with communities across the state to document and share everyday expressions of culture, tradition, and innovation. Each episode in this series introduces an art form and explores its relationship to the communities and places where it's rooted. You'll meet people who are teaching and sustaining these arts, learn what these practices mean to them, and look at the ways that tradition is actually a dynamic process happening in the present while also maintaining ties to the past. In this episode, we're looking at the tradition of granite carving in Barre, Vermont. Barre has at times been known as the granite capital of the world, thanks to the stone extracted from the surrounding hills that define its natural landscape. The work of quarrying and carving granite has shaped the culture and built environment of the region for over a century. Since at least the 1870s, people in central Vermont have cut, chiseled, hoisted, polished, and carved this natural resource, creating monuments, statues, and especially memorial grave markers. The granite industry brought Italian, French-Canadian, Scots, Scandinavian, Irish, Greek, and Spanish workers to the city of Barre, each bringing their own stone carving traditions. Over time, these artisans and the manufacturers they worked for shaped an enduring identity, the Barre stone carver. In this episode, we'll look at how 3 different carvers have engaged with and carried on this identity. I met and interviewed Heather Milne Ritchie and her apprentice Becky Lovely while they were working together as part of the 2023 cohort of Vermont Folklife's apprenticeship program. And thanks to our archive, we'll also get to hear directly from Heather's mentor, master carver George Krjanowicz. Heather is a master carver currently working with her own apprentices, and she's one of very few women working in Vermont's granite industry today. Her commercial work is in the memorial carving business, and she's also an active independent artist. She got her start in stone carving in the 1990s as an apprentice in Vermont Folklife's Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program. Similar programs exist in many other states across the country, funded by partnerships between the National Endowment for the Arts and state arts agencies, in our case, the Vermont Arts Council.
So I'm Heather Milne Ritchie. I was born and raised in Barre, Vermont, have spent time outside of central Vermont pursuing other interests and education, but found my way back home in 1999 because I got a phone call that a local granite carver here, George Krjanowicz, was looking for an apprentice, and I was in New York City, sleeping on a friend's couch, working for a seamstress at the time, and said, Yeah, that sounds better than thawing garbage in April in New York City. So I couldn't wait to come back home and dove right in with him through the Vermont Folklife Center apprenticeship program. And I learned a lot from George in my apprenticeship, and he was so busy in his business at the time, he hired me immediately afterwards, and I worked for him for over 15 years, and then started my own business. So I've been carving since 99, so we're at 25 years this year.
In many ways, Heather is the realization of the goals of the apprenticeship program. Someone who learned a skill and then went on to make it her trade and livelihood, ensuring the continuation of an important lineage. She's walked a well-trodden path in this centuries-old tradition, moving from apprentice to master artist, now teaching her own apprentices.
It was so pivotal for me to learn this craft in the environment that we were in. And this kind of goes back to how things used to be done and how things are done today. So most granite manufacturing plants are called sheds, and back in the early 1900s, most sheds had an in-house carver. So they had at least one artisan who had permanent residence in their shed who was responsible for doing all the hand carving work for that manufacturer. And I was in 3 different sheds with George.
Heather's early experiences working in Barre's granite sheds informed how she charted the course of her own career. A granite shed is really a factory. After a slab of granite is extracted from a quarry, that 20-ton block is trucked to a shed for processing. A lot of heavy machinery is then used to further cut up the block until each piece is a size and shape that a sculptor or artisan can work with, using handheld power tools to sculpt rough stone into the smooth and intricate text and designs you picture on a gravestone. Historically and in the present day, a granite shed is an overwhelmingly male-dominated space.
Being raised as a granite carver in that environment, I did a lot of deflection. I did a lot of, I was really mindful about how I carried myself, how I presented myself, the clothes I wore, the things that I made. I was always really careful to stay in line with my blue-collar colleagues. I really didn't want to draw attention to myself or, make a thing. I wanted to just be able to be respected for the work that I put out, and as another worker, I didn't want to draw attention to myself as a woman or as an artist. So that was a really hard conflict that I had within myself, trying to produce work on an artisan level while trying to snuff that artist inside of me and the woman inside of me, and then just, having to be mindful about how I'm interacting with people. Am I being friendly enough? Am I being too friendly? Or am I going to be misread by someone? Am I respected? And all those things really shouldn't matter when you're trying to produce work. But it was always this huge overlay that I kind of had to fight through on a daily basis just to get my work done.
In the early days of Heather's apprenticeship, folklorist Greg Sharrow recorded an interview with her mentor, carver George Krjanowicz. At the time, Heather was working with George inside Desolate's granite shed in Barre, and Greg brought up the topic of gender. Here's a clip from that 1998 site visit.
Most men working in the granite industry feel that physically women are not equipped, but again, that's a gender bias, and I have no gender bias. I feel that everyone should be treated on their own merits. Heather has a strong established personality, and regardless of the gender, I think that allows her to hold her own ground, and also because she has been able to surmount the obstacles that are associated with this for any gender. She has gotten a lot of respect from the people in her working environment, all of whom are employees of Desolates. I think I get some odd looks from people when I tell them that I have an apprentice and she is doing just fine. They say, "Well, why would you want to hire a woman?" And then I explain that it was not that I hired a woman; I hired a competent individual who happened to be a woman. So that's how I view things, and that's how, unfortunately, that's just the way it is here.
Through their apprenticeship, George's guidance provided an important buffer for Heather. But as she developed her own career as a carver, Heather didn't accept the way it is as the final word.
So now I'm in my own shop. I have control over the entire environment. I pick and choose who I want to be here. I rent space in a building that is not a granite shed, that is not a manufacturing plant. It is just a sculpture studio or a sculpture and finishing studio. So it cuts out a lot of the dynamics that were a real distraction for me. It takes a lot to do this kind of work and run a shop like this. It's a huge overhead.
We know which path Heather chose. Running her own professional studio today, Heather feels a similar responsibility to train new people and set them up to succeed within the trade she's dedicated 25 years of her life to.
And I think it's really important to teach people how to do this trade exclusively because there's so few of us in the industry that do this kind of work. There's only a dozen of us carvers. So it's kind of up to us to teach the younger generations or to teach anyone the trade because the manufacturers don't see it as their role to be the ones to be responsible for instruction. So myself and other carvers in the industry, we've all been training people, but it's hard to find people that want to stick with it.
In particular, she's working to expand opportunities for other women stone carvers, reshaping the landscape of who gets to participate in this storied industry, like one of her recent apprentices, Becky Lovely.
Okay, well, first off, my name is Becky Lovely. I grew up in Waitsfield, Vermont. Currently, I'm a dental assistant, so quite a far leap from granite, but actually quite similar when you really break it down to the little aspects of drilling and dust and protective wear and all that jazz. I can truly appreciate why Heather has created this environment for herself. As there's not very many women here, I think it's especially cool for me to be a woman coming into this, learning from a woman.
Heather and Becky began a Vermont Folklife apprenticeship together in 2023. As we try to do with everyone who participates in our program, I got to make several site visits to Bonnie Wee Studios, Heather's workspace on the Stevens branch of the Winooski River in Barre, to see Becky in action and record some interviews. These recordings, of course, have been placed in the Vermont Folklife archive. Anyone beginning to learn how to carve stone starts out getting familiar with the tools of the trade. Hammers and chisels are still used, but most commonly a pneumatic air hammer, a tool invented in Barre in 1888 that uses compressed air to power a piston, moving a chisel up and down, striking the stone surface, and allowing the sculptor to shape their material.
So there's a really interesting finesse to it to get the right amount of pressure and speed and all that to move the stone the way you want it to, which again is really, really cool to see the way the stone wants to break away versus the way you want it to. So, just learning the stone, learning the techniques, all that.
Becky was drawn to the apprenticeship by an artistic curiosity, and she was also in the midst of considering a career change. As an artist, but also a businesswoman within a complex commercial industry, Heather has been a great mentor to help Becky explore both the art and trade of stone carving.
Every carver I know I consider to be an artist, but out in the world, most people don't look at us that way. And it's really refreshing to be able to teach someone and break it down in a way that at the core it is about the art, but in the process it's about taking things step by step. And that makes my job a lot easier because I can train her to do the things that I need to have happen in my studio or in any other sculpture studio for the memorial industry that are really specific to this material and to this industry.
When I met Becky, she was still in the early stages of exploring who she might be as a Barre stone carver.
I'm just figuring things out. A lot of what I'm doing right now is personal stuff. The first piece I worked on was a dedication to my grandmother. My grandmother actually got sick, so decided to switch gears to do a lily to represent her in that. So it's just things that kind of resonate on a personal level with me. And I made a sculpture that I'm giving to my previous employer. It is a tooth. It's tooth number 18, which is a molar. And I put it on a black granite base with a little pin holding it up. So it's full relief sculpture. And I'm very happy with it. It's pretty different. I haven't seen anything like it. The things I'm working on right now are definitely more emotionally motivated for me versus what I think I'll be getting into is more of a, I don't want to say cookie cutter type job, but as Heather mentioned, we do see a lot of things that are similar, in either the floral or the figure that is in the memorial. So it's nice for me to be able to figure out what I want to be doing right now and what I like to be doing before I get into the production of it and the actual work aspect.
But that is, you can imagine yourself doing some of that memorial work for customers in the future.
Oh, totally. I think it's all really cool. And it's putting the same practices that I've learned just into that aspect. I really like being hands-on. As I mentioned, I've done a lot of different things in the past with my hands, and I think that this is a really cool way to combine what I like doing and what I need to do for, as an adult, you have to work to buy your groceries and pay for, whatever. So it's been really exciting for me to find something that I can do and also provide for myself and my family. So
A bit of time has gone by since my initial visits to Bonnie Wee Studios. So far, Becky is sticking with stone carving. As she continues to learn, she's expanded her personal projects.
I've been working on cheese boards and mortar and pestles as a little, familiarity with some of the tools, but also a potential source of income besides just the industry work.
And both Becky and Heather are looking to the future.
She has grown incredibly as an artist, as a sculptor, as a granite carver. She is astounding me pretty much at every turn with her attention to detail and her precision and her speed. And she's also merged into my business plan and has been helping me with the industry work.
My end goal is to stay in the industry. I do have intentions of sticking around.
This year, Heather is working with a new apprentice through the Vermont Folklife Apprenticeship Program. To close, I'll leave you with Heather's thoughts on the idea of tradition.
I think tradition's a huge part of this work. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it if it weren't for the tradition bearers and the people who wanted to carry that on ahead of me. I mean, we've been carving stone and Barre for hundreds of years, so it's pretty incredible that I get to carry this torch. I think tradition plays a huge role, although at times it can be limiting. And I think that, where we're at now in technology, and the technology aspect alone, it affects what I do and it affects how things are produced to a degree that we're not needing to do a lot of the manual labor breakdown of the stone to get to our design work. So training new people like Becky, I'm trying to balance that, and I'm trying not to focus as much energy on that rough out understanding and mentality, using a specific set of tools that you work your way through to get different kinds of effects with the stone isn't necessary in practice, but it's necessary to tradition, and it's necessary to learn the traditional way so you know how hard it is before you do it the easy way. But as far as time, money, energy, health, there's more efficient ways to do it now. So we do go over all the old school styles, tools, and methods, but it's not something that we're holding on to as purist carvers that we need to do every job this way. That's not how we're rolling.
This is Vermont Edition. Today we're listening to a new podcast from Vermont Folklife called The Arts That Shape Us. In a moment, host Mary Wesley will tell us about how some performance arts based in Asia have flourished in Vermont. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Today we're listening to a new podcast called The Arts That Shape Us. It's produced by Vermont Folklife. They're a nonprofit cultural and educational organization that ties Vermont arts to the past and present of the state's identity. Next, we're going to hear about the music and dance of Tibet, which Tibetan immigrants brought to Vermont.
Tashi dile, tashi dile, tashi dile.
Welcome to The Arts That Shape Us, an audio series about traditional arts and the ways they shape culture and communities. I'm Mary Wesley. In this episode, we'll meet Tibetan-American musician, dancer, teacher, and community leader Migmar Sering. I've known Migmar for over a decade. When we first met, I was working as an intern with Vermont Folklife, and I was supporting an initiative called the New Neighbors Project. This was an effort to make recordings of musicians with immigrant or refugee backgrounds who had recently resettled in Vermont. Migmar had arrived in 2011, and I was helping to coordinate some of the recording sessions for the sound recordist who was a partner on the project.
This is Mark Greenberg for the Vermont Folklife Center on October 1st, 2013 in South Burlington, Vermont with Migmar. Why don't you say your whole name and then explain a little bit? That's great.
Yeah, sure. Migmar Sering. The instrument that I'm going to play now is Tibetan drumyan. And this instrument, if you get to go to any family, any Tibetan family's house, you'll see this instrument in their house. So it's that common in Tibetan.
We recorded about 10 songs with Migmar, and it was clear that he was a prolific musician. That same year, 2013, Migmar applied to the Vermont Folklife Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program to teach drumyan to kids in Vermont's Tibetan-American community. This was something he had already been doing, and it was a perfect fit for the program. For as long as he can remember, Migmar has felt a connection with music and dance.
So one thing that I never forget in my life is when I was a little kid, the elders in my community, in my village, they loved me. They throw me from one arm to the other. They play with me, and they really sort of made me feel that I was special. And the only reason was I could dance with them. during every circle dance that we do in the evenings. I used to be there in the circle, and then I used to dance just like those people.
The village in Tibet where Migmar danced the circle dance is called Lengkor in the county of Tingri. He was born there almost 3 decades after the invasion of Tibet by communist China in 1950.
So back in those years, there was no light, no electricity, which means they don't have radio or TV, or they don't have anything. During the daytime, they start their day very early, and then throughout, it's hard work. It's very hard work, but they joyfully end it. After coming back, this is the social gathering that they have. One person will start the dranyan. That's like the bell, ringing the bell. Hey, it's about time. I'm ready. Anybody else who want to join me? That's the call. And then then another dranyan player will come, and then they will tune their dranyans. And then slowly people will come. And first they will start with a song, and then make sure everything is tuned, and then they will start dancing. So it's an everyday thing.
At age 8, Migmar left Lengkor. His father took him across the border through Nepal to attend school in Dharamsala, India. As it still is today, the city was the seat of the Tibetan government in exile, and a region where many Tibetans relocated or found refuge from ongoing conflict in their homeland. While his parents and siblings remained in Lengkor, Migmar completed primary and secondary school in the Tibetan Children's Village in MacLeod Ganj, a neighborhood of Dharamsala known as Little Lhasa. He brought his love of music with him.
I was the favorite of my music teacher. I sometimes, get really surprised how the other kids are not getting it. So in a way, it's in me, and when it comes out, it reflects a huge part of me, and that always made me feel special. And then I started teaching myself how to play the traditional Tibetan instrument called dranyan.
At school, Migmar didn't have his own dranyan, but when he was able to go home to Lengkor on a school break,
I realized that I can have a dranyan because there was a dranyan in my house. And my little brother, who was very little that time, he was my first teacher. Yeah. If I try to visualize, the dranyan was even taller than him. Yeah, so somehow we managed to, learn 1 or 2 songs. And then after that, I just carried on. And then after becoming a teacher also, even though I was a science teacher, I never gave up teaching dance or music.
Since the 1950s, the Tibetan diaspora has expanded, with multiple groups of Tibetans relocating to India, and later the US, Canada, Australia, and some European countries. Under the United States 1990 Immigration Act, 1,000 Tibetans living in exile in India, Nepal, and Bhutan were chosen via lottery to receive US visas. In 1993, Vermont became one of 25 resettlement sites in the United States. Unlike other immigrants who arrived in Vermont as refugees, Tibetans were identified as displaced persons and received no financial support from the U.S. government. Instead, Vermonters had to create a private nonprofit, Burlington's Tibetan Resettlement Project, to support Tibetans in establishing a life in Vermont.
And actually, it's my wife's sister. Her name is Tenzin. She was among the 1,000 Tibetans who won the lottery to go to U.S. as an immigrant.
The first Tibetans arrived in Vermont in 1993, and more followed over the next decade, including Mi'kmaq.
It was in the month of January, I think, 2011, when I reached here to Vermont. And my wife had been, waiting for the family reunion for about 15 years. And it's through her that me and my 2 girls get to come here to Vermont.
Mi'kmaq immediately began thinking about how he could support the growing Tibetan community.
After leaving India, coming here, the first thing that I did besides trying to make a life for myself, we call that earning the bread. Yeah, the first thing I did is music. How can I help?
One of our priorities since Vermont became a refugee resettlement state in the early 90s has been to support and document cultural practices and lived experiences within communities from immigrant and refugee backgrounds. This process happens over years and depends on developing partnerships with artists and community leaders. Listening to what's needed and finding ways that our organization can help. This can look like finding rehearsal space for the Bosnian Lilies, a kids' folk dance group active in the early 2000s, or finding cowhides for a Somali Bantu instrument maker so he can build instruments for his popular wedding band, or securing funding for Mi'kmaq to commission traditional dress and costumes for dance performances.
We have to take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll hear more about Tibetan music and dance making an imprint on Vermont's folk scene. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. If you're just joining us, we are listening to a new podcast from Vermont Folklife called The Arts That Shape Us. When we left off, we were hearing about the life of Mi'kmaq Sering, a Tibetan American who immigrated to Vermont in 2011. He's a musician and a dancer who took it upon himself to teach Vermonters about his country's artistic traditions. Let's dive back in.
Something I think I've come to understand, speaking with Mi'kmaq over the years, is that he has a clear picture for himself of what it means to be Tibetan. It's something he's carried with him since leaving Tibet. We've talked a lot about how his music students and the young people in his community understand what it means to be Tibetan American in Vermont today, and what role he wants to play in shaping that understanding.
It's more responsibility. Yeah, more challenging. Normally we don't think much about it because we are surrounded by Tibetans. And we never have to remind ourselves that we are Tibetans. But over here, it's totally different. When you have your kids speaking to you in English, and then when they speak Tibetan, when it sounds like a non-Tibetan has learned how to speak Tibetan, and he's trying hard, or she is trying hard to speak to me, that's a threat. That makes me feel like we are on the cliff, at the edge. And then it wakes you up and gives you the feeling that, hey, you have more responsibilities. It doesn't discourage, but it really alarms you. Like, you need to do it, because being a human being, feeding yourself is not the only responsibility we have.
When I spoke with Mi'kmaq back in 2014, this responsibility was on his mind. True to his intention, he was enacting this responsibility through music. He was serving as president of the Tibetan Association of Vermont, which was formed in 1993 by the first group of Tibetans arriving in the state. When they held community celebrations for Losar, the Tibetan New Year, or the birthday of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he played his dranyen and brought people together to dance and sing. And he was thinking ahead about how he could do more, despite the challenges of a busy work schedule.
That's my pain in the sense, Sundays I always have work. Saturdays I always have work. So I have to figure out something. I'm thinking about Monday and Tuesday now, after school.
And is the goal to teach to young people or anybody
who is interested. But my interest is to teach the young.
Yeah,
that's my interest. So I have a kind of a vision that if I can start, it's gonna be good. 1, 2, 3, 4.
He did start. That same year that we spoke was Migmar's first year taking part in the Vermont Folklife Apprenticeship Program. And he used some of the program funds to purchase 10 dranyens. He found rental space in Burlington and began holding classes for youth and adults in Vermont's Tibetan community. After a few years, he founded a formal school.
I started the rayon labeling by the grace of Vermont Folklife. Rayon meaning instrument and labeling meaning the place where we learn. And it was actually 2016. I double checked. 2016 and November 1st.
On my latest visit with Migmar, I stopped by a class in Burlington's Old North End with the current students of Roilang Lobling, the second batch. They were getting ready to perform for the 20th annual Tibet Festival.
The Tibet Festival is about our culture, showing our dances and our food, especially the food.
The Tibet Festival, it's really enjoyable because there's a bunch of food and a bunch of different people performing, including us and my mom sometimes, and a bunch of other parents. They perform different times, so there's the yak dance and the snow lion dance, and I feel like I want to do that when I'm older.
Migmar's students call him Gen Migmarla, a term of respect for a teacher in Tibetan. I also spoke with some of the parents who were at the class.
I try to emphasize my boys and let them know that how lucky we are to have Gen Migmarla in Vermont, because, this is such a blessing. Because part of it is because with music, it's one of the ways we are preserving the culture. So I try to stress them it's not just Damye class. There's so much in depth to this.
The last two community gatherings that we've had were amazing because the kids' performances just get better and better every time. I know our last one, I had tears in my eyes because everybody was singing and getting along, and I think the whole community in general are proud of what Gen Migmar has done with these kids. It's quite amazing to see the whole community gather around and sing while they play, and that's really special.
So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the young Lobling kids along with their training.
In November 2024, the students of Roilang Lobling and many others took to the stage at the Tibet Festival in Burlington.
Today I'm not playing training because I have handed it over to them. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Along with dance and music performances, The day-long event also featured a fashion show, remarks from community leaders, and about 4,000 homemade momos, Tibetan-style dumplings. Teenagers Tenzin Pasang and Tenzin Chuki performed a duet dance together, and Tenzin Pasang did a solo.
These Tibetan dances are no joke. They'll give you really good exercises. You have to move your body a lot, and I feel like really grateful that I actually learned dances and I adapted to it, because without dance, what is life?
Yeah. It's also nice to know that you're making the older generation proud. I feel like a common concern between them is how they're going to be able to continue the culture and continue it without a country to call home. So I think being able to help with that cause is really meaningful in an indirect way, just learning these and being encouraged to and being happy to learn is I feel is very important.
So now we have kids playing, teenage Tibetan young Americans dancing, and now they are voluntarily coming up, doing their dances, or let's say being a Tibetan. And then I'm very, very proud at the moment that now, there are kids enjoying the party, teenage enjoying the party, the elders enjoying the party, everybody is involved. And now the shape is back, as in Tibet, let's say. When we have the circle dance, the kids are there, the young, the old, everybody's there. And everybody has the eye and the ears on the dance or on the song. There is not much of a distraction. Now that is back. And that's the best gift I can have.
One of the most important aspects of the work we do and have done at Vermont Folklife over the past 40 years is to challenge assumptions about what it means to be a Vermonter and what the traditions of Vermont really are. Here's the thing. I'm never sure about using this label, Vermonter. I never know who it includes and who it might exclude. In one of our many interviews, I asked Migmar about this.
I'm curious, do you identify as a Vermonter, as someone who lives in Vermont, and how does that, I don't know if you do, that's a question, and then I'm just curious how that connects or doesn't to your identity as a Tibetan.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I absolutely 100% consider myself as a Vermonter. And I'm fortunate to land here because it's a place where you can enjoy all the 4 seasons. Winter is pretty tough, but it has its own beauty. So yeah, Vermonter, I absolutely feel I am. And my connection with the people here in Vermont is by being a Tibetan Vermonter. So I become special when I can become a Tibetan Vermonter. By saying that, it doesn't mean that Tibetan Vermonters are special. What I mean to say is, if I can share stories about Tibet, if I can share Tibetan culture, I can add another beauty. I can add to this diversity, and I can make Vermont a little more richer culture-wise. So whoever I'm teaching now, they are all Vermonters too. And then there will be more Vermonters who will be practicing Tibetan cultural dances, who will be singing Tibetan songs, playing Tibetan instruments. And in a way, it's like in a community, we have different people with different thoughts, different ideologies, different cultures. But when we are living in a community, we should embrace the difference. At the same time, we should respect whatever differences the other person has. So I don't know how to say this, but I have the feeling like it's like a drop in the ocean, but we know that oceans are built by drops. So somebody might not feel the importance of that drop, but if you think about it, each single drop is the reason why we have the ocean. So yeah. I think that's how I'm connected.
Yeah. Beautiful.
The sound of the dranyan guiding a circle of dancers, the granite grave markers in Hope Cemetery. These are just a few drops in the ocean of art forms that reflect and shape Vermont's cultural landscape. Vermont traditions practiced by Vermonters. Thanks for listening to The Arts That Shape Us. You can find more episodes along with other audio from Vermont Folklife on our podcast feed, Vermont Untapped, wherever you listen to podcasts. This series was produced by Vermont Folklife in collaboration with the artists it features. I want to extend deep gratitude to each of the artists who truly co-created this series with me. Special thanks to Heather, Becky, and George for their input on this episode, along with John Barstow. Thank you to Migmar, Tenzin Pasang, and Tenzin Chuki, and the parents and students of Roilang Lobling for your input on this episode. The Arts That Shape Us features just a few out of many, many apprenticeships that Vermont Folklife has been privileged to support over the years. To learn more about our organization and the program, please visit www.vtfolklife.org. Executive producers for The Arts That Shape Us are Kate Hoy and Andy Kolovos. The cello music heard in the intro is the traditional tune Green Mountain Petronella, recorded by Dave Hoy. This series also features the track West Bank, composed and recorded by Malcolm Parson. Find Malcolm's music at malcolmparson.com. The Vermont Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program is supported by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Vermont Arts Council. You can find more episodes of The Arts That Shape Us, along with other audio from Vermont Folklife on our podcast feed, Vermont Untapped, wherever you listen to podcasts. The Arts That Shape Us was supported by Vermont Public's Made Here Fund.
That story comes to us from The Arts That Shape Us, a new podcast hosted by Mary Wesley from Vermont Folklife. It's supported by Vermont Public's Made Here Fund. As always, you can weigh in on our show or pitch us your own ideas by emailing vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. You can also find Vermont Public on Instagram. Today's show was directed by Aaliyah Papes. Our managing producer is John Ahrens, and our producers are Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro. Our theme music was composed by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.